overlooked here.
I think it's pretty well known that F.E.A.R is one of the best first-person shooters, like, ever. Being a mix of action and horror, where you spent most of the game taking on soldiers with a variety of weapons, but then also being able to slow down time to make more precise shots, a lot like bullet time in Max Payne. But then in those moments when you're not blasting guys in slow-mo with one of the best shotguns in gaming history, you'd be hounded by visions of a ghostly little girl named Alma. F.E.A.R was just a blend of action and horror that worked really well, and so it really is a wonder why it took so long for a proper spiritual successor to come out. But in 2023, we finally got TREPANG, or TREPANG2, a hyper-violent shooter so clearly influenced by F.E.A.R that I'm surprised Warner Brothers hasn't bought the rights to it, just so they can make sure that yet another well-received game simply never gets a sequel. And yeah, what great timing. With Monolith being shut down recently, the chance of us seeing another F.E.A.R game is about as likely as surviving a point-blank shotgun blast to the face, which is to say, not very likely. And while definitely not without its flaws, TREPANG just kind of proves that another developer, aside from Monolith, knows what made F.E.A.R so great, and is more than capable of keeping the spirit of that franchise going. With all that said, let's talk about TREPANG, and I think the best place to start is with right, so TREPANG2, or TREPANG, being named after the studio that developed it, puts you in the shoes of the vaguely named Subject 106 as they work for Task Force 27 in an effort to bring down Horizon, a massive company that's secretly doing a whole bunch of shady stuff. And I mean, yeah, where have I heard that one before?
All for Umbrella's sake. Umbrella.
But whereas in games like Resident Evil and F.E.A.R, where those companies, Umbrella and Armacam respectively, were mainly just doing human experimentation, what Horizon is getting up to is way weirder. Cause yeah, man, it takes no time at all for you to encounter some really weird stuff, including Mothman, the Backrooms, and whatever the hell this thing is. So like, yeah, man, aside from being a massive military presence, Horizon is messing with alternate dimensions, summoning eldritch deities, and just being a general nuisance. And it's sort of up to you, as Subject 106 and Task Force 27, to shut down these operations and gather evidence to blow the whistle on Horizon. And like, while the plot is actually pretty simple, a lot how F.E.A.R was, I think the really weird stuff is super compelling. Cause while F.E.A.R sticks to just Alma and experiments with mind control and psychic powers, TREPANG leans far more heavily into SCPs. Yeah, you know, that internet archive of weird entities, anomalous objects, and so on. And I mean, other games have done something similar, with Control being a really prominent example. Like in that game, you had to deal with all sorts of weird shit that was being contained in the oldest house. But while Control leaned fully into SCPs, I actually think TREPANG doesn't lean far enough into them, and I think that's just because I found the mission with the obelisk and the backrooms, as well as that mission on the oil rig with that Lovecraftian monstrosity, to be so compelling. They don't really provide explanations as to what's going on, and I mean, they really don't need to. You just have to deal with the fact that these otherworldly places and things exist.
That director always told me, don't ever question anything, just do your job and mind your business. Well, whatever the hell we just saw. Yeah, I think I see your point.
But then when you deal with the Mothman, it does explain it away as human experimentation gone wrong. And I just think it would have been far better to just be like, yeah, Mothman exists. This is what he looks like, and we managed to capture him as a means to try and predict the future, or something like that. You know, since Mothman is known to kinda show up before tragic events like the collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967. I mean, it would kinda make sense for this massive company to want to be able to foresee these massive tragic events and try to capitalize on them. So like, I think they should have kept everything in that weird and vague paranormal place instead of trying to provide any sort of scientific explanation at all. It's also worth mentioning that there are some extremely heavy-handed plot points. Like this part where a massive nuclear warhead is pointed out to you, just so you know what to do if the place falls into enemy hands. And I mean, yeah, you'll never guess what happens. I also want to say that while the story is super simple in premise, and there aren't a whole lot of cutscenes, the voice acting that you do get from pretty much everyone is way better than I'd expect it to be.
106 is expendable. Kill or capture, I don't care. We'll take good care of her.
Supply drop incoming. Hang in there.
Your generic army buddies talk to each other in mostly believable ways, and during combat, enemies chatter to each other about the situation, and their screams as you mow them down almost makes you feel bad. Almost. But coming in at about 6-ish hours with 5 main missions and 6 side missions, with another 2 if you have the DLC, the main campaign and its story isn't really the main reason for you to be playing Trepang. I mean, F.E.A.R isn't exactly remembered for, its narrative, unless we're talking about the end of F.E.A.R 2. No, man, it's all about the... When I think about first-person shooters that I just feel are absolutely unparalleled when it comes to raw gunplay and fun factor, Trepang is at the absolute top of that list. Like, I really don't think it gets much better than this. From the way guns handle to the insane amount of gore, like, dude, this is just almost FPS perfection. Almost. Cause while I do think the core shooting and movement, as well as weapon and enemy variety, are all really good, I think it could have gone a little farther when it comes to some of the mechanics it has. Like, you have that slow-mo shooting ability, and honestly, you'll hear no complaints about that from me. I actually think this is probably one of the best utilizations of this mechanic in any game, including Max Payne. But you've also got this ability to become invisible, and the game presents it as a way to stealth through encounters, but I never really found a good chance to do that. As soon as you kill an enemy, others become alerted and it's just back to regular combat. And so what I ended up using this for was to reposition myself, catch a breather, reload, or grab a human shield. And I'd say that that's the intended purpose, since you also can't use the invisibility for very long, but then you've also got a silencer attachment for nearly every weapon, giving the impression that stealth will be a viable option, but it just isn't. Or at least I never found it to be. But aside from that weird stealth element, I think the actual core combat is absolutely fantastic. You feel like an absolute force of nature as you're tearing through these guys. Movement is super fluid as you slide, jump, and mantle over stuff. You can melee enemies in a variety of ways. Like, you can just gun butt them, but then you can also slide and take the legs out of enemies, leaving them open to becoming human shields, of which you can use as grenade launchers. You can also do a running kick that can kill most enemies in a single blow, as well as this absolutely sick jump kick that launches you back from enemies, leaving them open to a full frontal assault. And I actually played the whole thing on hard, and in some of the levels, I was absolutely getting my butt handed to me. Trepang doesn't have as much of a push-forward combat model as something like Doom 2016 or Eternal, but it does have some of those elements. Like, there are health and armor pickups around arenas, but most enemies also drop armor and ammo on death, so you'll be sprinting around, collecting armor and ammo as you fight. And it just gets to a point where you're just annihilating enemies with shotgun blasts and contact grenades. You're slide kicking a guy, using him as a human shield, and then as a projectile grenade. And you're doing all of this in slow motion. It's just FPS bliss. And it's like, I don't even know how to really improve on it. Oh, wait, hang on a minute. Yeah, dude, a couple of missions in, you get this serum that lets you hold 2 of pretty much any weapon. And at this point, it's like the developers incepted my brain to figure out everything that I could personally ask for out of a game. You've got bullet time shooting, jump kicking, dual wielding, and human shields. And like I said, all with this super fluid movement and guns that feel absolutely excellent to use and enemies that are fun to use them on. And speaking of, Trepang really goes for quality over quantity for its weapon roster. You've got a basic pistol, an SMG, and an assault rifle, all of which are, pretty standard for any shooter. But I think things get way more interesting when you get into the heavier weapons. Like, there's a portable minigun that's kinda hard to come by, but just shreds through guys. And then there's a grenade launcher that is just awesome, dude. Like, you can see the massive shockwave of gore that this thing leaves behind. It's insane.
Dear God, it's beautiful.
There are a few others I didn't really find myself using as much, like a bolt launcher that can nail enemies to walls, as well as a sniper rifle that really only has a few good uses, like this level at a crashed plane, or this bit at the cultist base. But if you have the DLC, there's also another assault rifle, a magnum, and a sword. And let me tell you, the sword trivializes a lot of the combat sections, because it's basically a one-hit kill, making you feel like the bride in Kill Bill or something. But I think the absolute star of this game's combat and weapon roster is the shotgun. Like, this thing isn't just the best weapon in the game, absolutely dumpstering every enemy easily, but it may quite possibly be the best video game shotgun of all time. The way this thing looks, the way it handles, and how it sounds are just, it's all incredible.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Like, I think about this all the time. I don't think I've ever used a more fun shotgun than this one. And since you can only carry 2 weapons at any time in Trepang, I literally always had the shotgun with me. Hell, sometimes I kept 2 of them on me. And it's worth mentioning too, that there's a fair bit of customization with each weapon. Like, you can add lasers for better accuracy, scopes to rifles, or with the shotgun, add Dragon's Breath shells. Cause, I guess the goons that you've been facing have had it a bit too easy for too long. And I guess that's a decent enough segue to talk about who you're fighting, because it is just mostly generic military guys. They do offer up enough variety to make you consider your approach, like they are standard enemies that are easy enough to take down, but then you've got guys with riot shields that are almost bulletproof unless you aim for the legs. But an even easier solution is to simply slide under them, take their legs out, and dispatch them how you see fit, which is typically, human grenade launcher. But enemies are also very similar to the ones in F.E.A.R, both in design as well as their AI. I mentioned earlier that they can make callouts, but they also flank you and react to what you do, like throw grenades or even when you take a human shield.
Watch your fire! Hostage!
Overall, enemies are simple as far as design, but they're just a ton of fun to decimate thanks to the weapons you get to use, as well as the destruction that you cause. And brother, you are causing a ton of destruction, which kind of leads me into considering that Trepang was only made by a handful of people, when it comes to presentation, it is astoundingly good. Weapons look and sound absolutely fantastic, and even have different reload animations based on whether they still have ammo in the clip or not. You can even see the character pull the trigger as you fire, like it's just great attention to detail. And that attention to detail extends into a lot of the game. Like here, when I shoot this water tank, the water actually stops where the bullet hole is.
Impressive. Very nice.
Environmental destruction is absolutely phenomenal as well, with particles flying everywhere and objects being torn to shreds. And enemies are equally destructible, with bits of them flying around as they ragdoll. And I mean, you can even see their organs come out, like you can shoot the whole brain out of a guy. I mean, shit. And I think if I had to level any complaint at that sort of attention to detail, it's that it makes it really noticeable when you don't get the reaction that you expect. Like when bullets ricochet off glass with a spark, or some objects that just can't be destroyed. And like, sure, this is a small team. I mean, really small. And you can't really expect everything to be destructible or to react properly. But when so much does look so great, it's just kinda hard not to notice when something doesn't look as good. I also want to mention that while the sound design is really great, the audio mixing is a bit off. Like whenever someone needs to speak, music doesn't seem to gradually fade in or out, but instead it's like all other sound is just immediately turned way down, and it can be a bit jarring for audio levels to change so drastically.
Those cultists are a bunch of freaks. You'll see what I'm talking about.
What I will say is that the music composed by Brandon McKagan is absolutely killer. Like, I don't think I've paused a game since GoldenEye 64, where I've paused the game and just listened to the pause music because it goes so hard. And a lot of the music has this sort of techno sound to it, and it kind of reminds me of that scene from Blade at the Vampire Club. But overall, man, aside from, the weird sound mixing and a few things not really reacting the way that you'd expect, Trepang just looks and sounds fantastic. And I think that Trepang is a game where the core gameplay is so fun and tightly designed that I think the biggest critique I can give is that there isn't much to do with that combat outside of replaying the campaign and the combat simulator. There are a whole slew of really fun cheat codes to unlock by beating levels on harder difficulties, as well as bits of lore to find and camos for your weapons and your character. And in that way, Trepang really feels like an old school video game, where most of the stuff in game is unlocked by playing instead of with a credit card. Yeah, what a novel concept. But I think Trepang could have benefited from more bonus modes, like a mercenary style mode where you have to get a high score from rapidly killing enemies in a certain time limit. Or maybe that arcade campaign mode from Doom 2016. Like, imagine having to rack up a high score by earning points through combos, like sliding into an enemy, then scoring a headshot, and then finishing with a body shield grenade. Or a mode where you have to beat waves of enemies with a randomly spawned weapon each new wave, kinda like how gun game in Call of Duty works. Like, I just think Trepang is ripe for a lot of fun bonus modes, and sadly, there just aren't any. But look, man, what is here is an absolutely excellent shooter with a ton of potential for future games. And with Monolith gone and the F.E.A.R franchise on ice, I can't really think of a better studio to, take up the mantle and keep the franchise going, or at least its spirit. And I think if we ever get a sequel to Trepang, all I could really ask for is more. More guns, more levels, more horror, and more bonus modes. And yeah, Trepang ain't perfect, but it's like, if the only real complaint I can level at a game is that it left me hungry for more, instead of, say, asking what the hell went wrong during development, you've got a certified banger on your hands.